Hello and welcome to From Mrs. to Me, a podcast where you'll be inspired by courageous stories of strength and resilience told by women just like you who have been through the upheaval of divorce. This is their journey from Mrs. to Me, finding their true identity and creating a bold, beautiful life. I'm Chrissy Freeman and I'm your host, a certified life coach and divorced mother of two. Join me each week as we explore real stories of divorce and what it takes to transform and live in alignment with the real you. Hello, and welcome to another episode of From Mrs. to Me. I'm Chrissy Freeman, divorce empowerment coach and your host. You are going to love the insights shared in this episode. While most of our episodes are real life stories of divorce, I also think it's really important to provide resources to the listeners out there and experts to support you on your journey through divorce, which is why I'm excited to share our next guest with you, Rachael Burns. Rachael is the founder of True Worth Financial Planning, a fee-only registered investment advisor focused on helping newly single women achieve financial independence after divorce. Through her own experiences with trauma and money, she felt a calling to support and empower other women going through life's most challenging transition. Rachael helps women come up with a plan for managing their finances after divorce that makes them feel confident and empowered. She is also an author of a book titled SOAR, S-O-A-R, 4 Simple Steps to Confidently Manage Your Finances After Divorce. So, Rachael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chrissy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so to jump in, I would love you to tell us a little bit about you. And while your story isn't one of divorce, it is one of making a pivot and having to overcome fear of potential loss and big life change. So can you tell me more about this shift and why you created this business?
Sure. So professionally, I'm a financial planner and have been for quite some time. Didn't really get into the divorce field specifically until a few years ago. On a personal note, I have little twin 5-year-old boys and I'm married and I'm still married. So I always tell people that, I work in divorce. I am not divorced. I do not have personal experience being divorced, but I do have experience in adapting my financial plan as a result of major life changes. And all of us have unexpected life changes that are going to happen at some point. Really, no one is immune to life happening to them. And, there's different things that happen to people. Sometimes their parents pass away or their spouse passes away or they get divorced or their kids grow up and leave the house or they get retired. So there's good shifts and bad shifts, but there are so many of these massive life shifts and these impact your finances in a major way. And so you have to kind of reevaluate your finances at a time when you're probably pretty stressed out about whatever life event is going on. And so my stressful life event was right when I found out that I was pregnant with my twins. I also found out that my husband has a brain tumor. And he had surgery, he had chemo and radiation and all this treatment while I was getting more and more pregnant. And then the kids are born and his health actually stabilized and he has been doing remarkably well. It's been almost 6 years since his 5 years since his last treatment. Yeah. So that has been a huge blessing. But at that time, my life was changing so drastically in so many ways at the same time. I was going to have 2 babies and my husband's health was very, very unknown. They told us when he was diagnosed, don't Google the type of tumor he has, just kind of live your life and do what you need to do, but because the statistics were so bad, so bad. And he's really a statistical anomaly, but he's doing really well. But anyways, during that time, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what's going to happen with him. And I know I'm going to have 2 babies all of a sudden. That was twice as many babies as I was expecting to have. I was like, oh, 2,
surprise!
Okay. Yeah. And so I'm looking at my financial future, my life future differently. Obviously, everything was going to change. And there were a lot of decisions that need to be made. There were a lot of preparations that needed to be made, a lot of kind of worst case scenarios that needed to be explored because they were very real. And that was a really stressful time. And I am a financial person. I mean, I have been in this industry for 15 years, and that was still very overwhelming for me. And we got through it. And once we got through it, looking back on it, I thought, wow, that would have been a lot worse if I had 0 experience with finances. I could have very easily been in a different line of work or not been working at all and not be involved in the family finances. And that's the situation for a lot of people who are, either they're getting divorced or they're widowed or whatever. Like there's a lot of people where they are the one that was not in charge of the money in the relationship. It's a very, very common dynamic. And so I thought, wow, that could have been a lot worse. And I'm really grateful that I had the comfort level with the financial part of those decisions because there were plenty of other things to be very uncomfortable about. So I felt fortunate in that way. And I thought, I really want to pivot my career so that I'm helping other women who are in a similar situation, who are going through tough times in their life. They need someone to guide them through these financial decisions, but with a little bit more empathy than maybe the average financial advisor. And I thought I have these kind of unique skills and experiences that allow me to help people in that situation. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to work with women in transition. That's all I do. I'm really hardcore about that niche now. I really don't work with anyone else anymore. And it's just been the most gratifying experience imaginable because that's all I do every day. And I love it so much.
Oh, amazing. Well, one of the major reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because I hear from women all the time that one of the reasons it actually took them so long to leave the marriage was because of the financial insecurity. And so, I'm curious for our audience out there, what do you think is sort of the first step that they should take as they prepare for divorce or being a single income household?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say wherever you are in that decision-making process, if you're just considering getting divorced or if you were just told by your spouse that they want a divorce, wherever you are, the first step is to just assess your financial situation. You need to know what the two of you have together before you can figure out what you're going to have on your own at some point. And for some people already have an idea of what their finances look like. And if that's the case, then that's great. Maybe just get a little bit more details, like make a list of where your accounts are held and how much is in these different accounts and what types of accounts and those types of things. But for some people, they're like, I don't even know where to start. I have no idea where our money is. I have no idea if we have investments. I don't know if we have retirement accounts. I don't know how much we owe on the house. There's a lot of people who are just like, I just don't know. And they are often embarrassed that they don't know. But I always tell them, I'm like, that's normal. That doesn't mean that's the preferred way, but it's super normal. And you should never feel embarrassed about that, because even if you're rusty and you haven't been in touch with the finances, you can always learn. You can always get back in and get involved. It's never too late to do that. So don't ever feel bad, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to log in to my 401k. Like, don't worry about it. most people don't. So, but you do need to figure it out going forward. That's really important.
Yeah, it's huge. And I'm so glad that you said that about don't be embarrassed. So many people go through this because there was so much shame in that for myself when I went through divorce. I mean, you mentioned earlier, and it was my story. My former spouse was in charge of all the expenses. He was the primary breadwinner. And he didn't want me to look at the finances. He didn't want me to manage them. And so it was extremely scary to think about, wow, I mean, I don't know how to invest. I don't know where to put my money. I have no idea what to ask for during the divorce. I know nothing. And there was so much shame around that. And it was, one of the big reasons why I waited so long to make a really hard decision. And so, so as I think about that, if you were to say sort of that first step to managing your money after divorce, like what is, as we sit there and we're so overwhelmed, right? And whether that's, loss of a loved one or it's actually divorce, it can be very sudden and you're almost frozen in this place of, I don't know what first step to take. And so if you were to tell, a woman that comes to you, hey, Rachel, what do I even do? What is my first step? What would you tell them?
So I think the first step for a newly divorced person is the same for a soon-to-be divorced person, which is assess your financial situation. Because if you're still married and you're facing divorce, you need to understand your current finances. And then you can kind of figure out how they'll be split between you. But once that's happened, you need to reassess again. Because once things have been split, once the dust settles, you need to know what you have to work with. And that's hard to visualize until you get through it and things are actually physically split, because it's like when you're looking at a separate or an MSA and you're okay, this person gets these things and this person gets these things. It's hard to conceptualize that. So you need to conceptualize it though. So you basically make a list of what you have and where it is and what it's worth. And just that level of awareness can be a big step for someone. It's like, wow, that's more money than I thought we have, or that's less money than I thought we have. Either way, like usually that's kind of an eye-opening experience, just doing an inventory of what you have. And then once you have that inventory, you can start strategizing. Okay, what do I need to do with these things that I have? Are they fine where they are? Do I need to change the ownership? Do I need to put new beneficiaries on this? Do I need to change my investments? That's kind of more advanced stuff, but you need to know, like, just understand your big picture. That's just step number one. And that part is actually not super hard. You just have to sit down and do it and like face the facts. And it's easier said than done. It's like being emotionally ready to face the facts. That's kind of the hard part.
Yeah. And that's why this is such a great conversation, because I think it is, when you're leading with a lot of emotion, it is very hard to really sit down and get clear, kind of clear out all that noise. And what is it that I need to do to take care of myself and my family going forward? And so, this is super helpful. I mean, really, even just reassessing, looking at what you have. I didn't even know that you can make a simple budget for yourself. It's sort of, I had never had to do that. I mean, I married at such a young age that I really didn't even need to do that prior to my divorce. And so, that is a simple thing, right? A simple tool that you can do is, what do you have? Let's look at what you have, what's coming in and what's going out. It's that simple.
Yeah. You have to know what you have in terms of assets, like the accounts that you have or the investments that you have. And then you need to know the debts too. That's one kind of piece. But then there's, okay, what's coming in and going out. So what you have in terms of assets and debts is one thing, and then the income and the expenses are the other thing. And both of those are really, really, really important, because if you only have this much coming in and you have this much going out and there's a negative that's a problem, you're just going to have to figure it out. And it's not fun. No one likes budgeting. And I'm not saying you have to sit down and start crossing things off of your budget that you're not allowed to have anymore, but you do need to just make a simple list of your expenses. And if you ask me to do that right now, I'd be like, I don't even know what we spend on. Like, it's something, I think it's a good exercise for everyone to do, but especially if you've just gone through a big change, because if you're newly divorced and you're used to a grocery budget for a family of 4, and now it's just you, and then you have the kids part-time, that's going to look different. Or your utility bills are going to be different. Or what if your spouse was the one that was doing the pool and now you have to pay someone to do it? It's just like, there are all these weird little things that change that you don't even think about, but you just need to be aware of.
Yeah. Such good points. And, I think we think about like today. So, there's so much uncertainty, right, in the world. And, one of the things that I also hear, and I know is a concern for people, is, in a market like this that is sort of so volatile and, it's up and down and all around, and the interest rates are so high. If women want to grow their savings, and that's truly right now, they just want to grow that a little bit. What do you advise clients? Is there sort of a safest place where you tell them, is it like, because I felt like, I don't know, I just keep it in my savings account. Like, isn't that what I'm supposed to do? And then I'm like, oh God, wait, am I making any interest off that? I don't know. Is there any guidance that you give women, when they're just like, what do I do with the savings that I have right now?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say savings, like the places that you save money and the amount of money that you earn, it's on a spectrum. And the lowest end of the spectrum, the lowest risk places you can put money, like, let's look at really, really safe. Let's say you literally stack cash in a safe and it's in your house and it's fireproof. That's okay. About as safe as it gets, I guess. That's really safe. A bank going under is not going to impact you. The stock market crashing, not going to impact you, but it's not growing at all. It's just the amount you have in there today is the amount that's going to be in there 10 years from now, as long as you don't touch it. So that's like one end of the spectrum. And that's a fine place to put money, but you just need to understand the limitations. So then on the other end of the spectrum are like super, super risky investments like Bitcoin or, these like stocks that you hear, GameStop, where like random people start getting involved in the stock market. And it's like incredibly volatile stuff where you hear about people making tons and tons of money in a short amount of time, but it's so extraordinarily risky and they could have just as easily lost it all. That's on the other end of the spectrum. And there's a gazillion things in between those two things, which can be extremely overwhelming, which I think is why a lot of people are like, oh, I don't even want to deal with it. I don't want to look at it. But for the most part, you're going to be on like the kind of boring end of the spectrum. And there are places you can put money, especially now. The bad thing is that interest rates are higher. It's bad if you're buying a house or borrowing money for some other purpose. That's a bummer. But it's really, really great if you're saving, because interest rates on savings accounts are higher. Now, if you're at a big, big bank like Wells Fargo or Bank of America, they're not going to pay you very much because they don't have to, because they're a big, giant bank. And they're just like, if you want to, they're not going to incentivize you to whatever. They don't have to pay a super high rate. But there are plenty of other online banks that have less overhead because they don't have bank locations that pay 5% or even more than that. Like I know a lot of clients who have high yield savings accounts that are paying over 5%. And it's just in a savings account. It's not invested in the market. It's not subject to risk. And there's FDIC insurance for a certain amount of your savings at a bank. And getting 5% return on your savings compared to getting 0% on your savings account at B of A is a really, really big jump. That's like a big, exciting bonus you can get. Like it will just start making you money every month, just sitting there. And it's so exciting. It's so exciting to see interest roll into an account every month. And I see people all the time where they just have a chunk of savings that's just sitting there. And I'm like, you could just move it into a different account and make 5%. And if you've got a big chunk of money, that can end up, it's a significant amount of money. So it just takes some research. You just got to look around at what things are paying and weigh the pros and cons of moving the funds from wherever they are now. But you have options, and the options are really good right now. We're in a good climate for interest on savings.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that, because I learned so much recently about these high yield accounts, and there's so many of them. And I actually did my own research. I was so proud of myself. I did my own research. I had sold my home, and so I had this cash, and I was like, I literally was keeping it in this savings account, and it was not making any money. And a friend of mine said to me, really, I can't remember how it came up in the conversation. And she's like, you really should look into these. And it's so easy to research and find these high yield accounts. And now my money is starting to make money. And it's such a beautiful thing to see that. So it's like these easy things you can do. So, which leads me to my next question in terms of working with you. So what would you say is sort of the most common reason why women reach out to you either pre or post divorce?
I would say it's because they don't feel confident about their finances, whatever that means to them. Sometimes they're like, I don't know what our finances even look like, and I need someone to help me figure that out. Or sometimes they'll come to me and they'll be like, I feel like I don't have the baseline knowledge to be able to manage this stuff on my own. And I can help them kind of educate them. Or if they're like, I just need help planning for the future. I need the specific strategies that I need to put into place to get to where I want to go in the future. So those are the things that I help with, kind of big picture, just like making them feel more secure with their current finances and then their future finances too.
Yeah, which is huge. And I would love to hear more about, so I mentioned at the beginning about your book that you've also written, which is called SOAR, which I love that. And I love the acronym. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? I think there's 4 strategies. Is that right?
So when I work with a client on a financial plan, so I work with people in a few different ways. Sometimes I just work on an hourly basis, like during their divorce. But once they're divorced, I typically do a financial plan for them. And I take them through the same process every time. Obviously, it's highly, highly customized for each person, but the process is kind of the same. And that's where the book came from, is that process. And I called it SOAR, which is an acronym for set goals, organize or get organized, assess, so kind of gather all the details, and R is review. And so, like, whether you do that with someone like me or whether you do that on your own, it's kind of the same process. And when you think about it in terms of just this like 4-step process, it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, each step there's work involved in it, and you have to find some stuff. It's a project, but conceptually, it's not that complicated. And that's what I want to convey to people. Like, look, this is not rocket science. This is not easy. It's not something you're just going to be like, oh, I just figured it all out in an afternoon. But it's not rocket science. And if it's something that's important to you, if it's something that's bothering you, then you can totally figure this stuff out. With a little bit of help, you can totally do that. And you don't have to worry like you are now going forward. And so my book just kind of introduces the process and kind of tells people how they can implement that on their own. And of course, I'm here if people need help or if they want part of that done for them. But the process, I think, is really approachable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's it, is breaking it down. I love that acronym, by the way. I think it's fantastic. it's really breaking that down. And there's nothing more empowering than looking at your finances and saying, I've got this. I've got this. Like, okay, I know what's going in and out. And maybe you're not, trading daily, but you don't need to reach for that yet. It's like one step at a time, take a look at what you have, get organized, as one of your acronym is, assess and then review. That's why it's so perfect, because that is so simple. But yet I think it seems so daunting for us when, you again are just, you've never done it before. It's like anything, right? It's like, one of the things that I talk to a lot of my guests about is like, when we lean into that discomfort, that's when change happens. And this is just another one of those uncomfortable things that once we take the time and we actually do some work around it, it's so empowering to say, wow, this is another thing that I can do on my own. And that's, I think, so valuable.
And there's such a sense of relief once it's like, oh, I can check off that box. That's something that I don't need to worry about anymore. And for me personally, if I have to go through some sort of uncomfortable experience, I always try to think about, oh, I'm really looking forward to the relief I'm going to feel once that's done. Like, I remember thinking that when I was in grad school, we had to do all these presentations. And back then, I didn't used to enjoy them. I'm so used to it now and I enjoy it now. But back then I'd be like, I'd be kind of getting nervous waiting for my turn. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to feel so good when it's done. And it was so much easier to feel that way than to be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so miserable or so embarrassing or so painful or whatever. There's so much relief at the other end for when you put in the time to figure this stuff out. You're going to feel really, really good afterwards. That's a huge burden to be lifted from your psyche, I think, when you no longer have to worry about money. And I'm not saying that, oh, you just go through these steps and you're going to magically have all the money you need, but you're going to at least know your situation and you're going to have a general kind of plan going forward, which I think provides a lot of relief.
Yes. Oh, completely. And I'd love to just kind of pivot for just a minute and talk about, we talked in the beginning about your pivot, but one of the things that you said really resonated with me, which is you said you love the work that you do. And I love to talk about that with people because we can define as women, what we want to do. We can, even if, we're working for, a big corporation or, and we are like, oh God, I can't leave that because, then I won't have any money. I would love to talk to you about, because you've had all of this experience working in the financial industry. Tell me about how you made this happen, like how your mindset around, because a lot of women after divorce get stuck in this fear of, I can't do this. And I know you're married, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. There's still, when you have this job that you have been doing and you rely on for so long, it's scary to take that step. How did you overcome that to create this business?
So even though I am married and my husband has been working this whole time, and having his income is the reason why I was able to pull this off like I did. And I'm not going to say, oh, everyone should just quit their job and start their own business. It's like, no, there's more to that. I was in a position of privilege where we had dual incomes. Me stopping mine for a little bit wasn't that big of a deal. But here's the thing. We didn't know what his life expectancy was. We didn't know how long he'd be able to work. It could have been like 2 weeks later and he could be unable to work. So it was almost as if I had to pretend like that wasn't there. And so that was really scary to me. And I'm someone who prepares and I'm someone who calculates risk. And so the idea of me leaving my very stable job with benefits and whatever, and potentially having an interruption to his income as well was really scary. And we had little kids. And so that wasn't something I took lightly. But that is a risk that is measurable. That's not it's not like a vague, like you can actually measure that risk. It's like, okay, let's say his income stops and mine takes this amount of time before I'm actually profitable in my business. And I could guess that because I calculated, okay, this is what my fees are going to be. This is how much I'm going to work. This is kind of what I could expect in terms of income and how long it's going to take to ramp that up. Let's say we have no income during that time. How much could we live off of? What things could we cut out? What things are in place to protect us, like disability insurance or life insurance? And I calculated the risk and I'm like, that's a risk worth taking to me. And that's something that we talked about and he was in agreement. And the farther along I got, the more that risk was reduced. And then eventually it was gone. And it wasn't that scary because it was measurable. And like, if I didn't have his income, it would still be the same process. It would be like, okay, let's say it's going to take this long before I'm making money. How much money do I need in the meantime? Can I save that? For some people, they can't. And so for some people, they, if they have several kids or if they have, I don't know, there's all sorts of reasons why you need to have money.
Right? We wish we didn't have to, but yes.
Like if you can just move back in with your mom and just eat top ramen or whatever, it's like, sure, I can start my own business. But,
Exactly.
You do need to calculate your own risk because, my risk is going to be different than everyone else's.
I love that.
But yeah, but it's measurable. It's figure outable. But when I was, okay, these are the risks, but this is the benefit. I was like, oh, totally worth it. I will do whatever needs to be done if something happens in order to make this happen. And I got there, I got through it. And it's just so, the risk reward, the reward was so high. So,
and now you have the flexibility and you have probably all the things that you wanted, having kids at home.
I have everything.
Yeah.
I have everything I've wanted. Like career-wise, I have everything I could ever want. And whenever I talk to someone who's not happy with their career, I'm like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can find something. And I realize that not everyone knows this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I want to do. But even if you don't know, you can get closer. You can figure out, you can try stuff and, well, I don't like that. And I do like this. But you don't have to be miserable in your career.
Yeah. And I love, so many nuggets that you shared that are so good. I mean, first of all, measure isn't measurable and you can't, that is part of the process you do need to assess risk. I absolutely agree with that, especially if you're going to make a leap, meaning you're just going to leave what you know behind and you're going to take on a new career.
Yeah.
But I do think there's ways to start taking steps to your point, to say, you know what? Okay, I have a full-time job, but my kids are if you talk about divorce, my kids are with their dads on these nights. So why don't I spend that time, researching, looking at taking classes online, or going to classes, whatever works with your schedule. Yeah. But you now have this time that you didn't have before. And I think sometimes, after divorce, women get sort of stuck in this, oh my God, I how am I going to move forward? And, I just need to meet somebody else right away or, versus healing and doing what feels good to them and creating a life that is authentic and true to who they are. And so that leads me to my last question for you, which is I like to ask all my guests to end is, how do you define authenticity for yourself?
For myself, I don't know when this happened, but at some point I really stopped caring about what anyone else thought.
You got to at some point.
Like, almost to a fault where I'll take my kids to school and they're in kindergarten, so that I have to walk them up and stand in line. So it's not like I can just boot them out of the car. And I'm like in my pajamas half the time, or my hair's like, and I'm like, I just don't care. Should I care? I don't care though. But the same goes for things I'm going to do in my business, or like whatever it is that I'm doing. I care about other people deeply. Like I care, like I never want to hurt anyone. And I want to make sure that, and I want to help people as much as I can in my career. But in terms of like, oh, well, if I want to do this thing that I want to do, but what will someone else think? Like that thought hasn't entered my mind in so long. And I'm like, oh, what a freeing feeling, because there are a lot of people who can't move forward with whatever thing that they want to do because they're worried about what their parents are going to say, or their spouse or someone. And I just don't do that anymore. And I'm like, oh, I don't know when exactly that happened, but I don't think it's just an age thing. I think some of that is age, but I think I just became so secure with who I am and where I am in my life and what I'm doing. I'm good. And if someone else didn't agree, then I seriously don't care.
Oh, what a gift. What a gift, though, that you've given yourself. Because honestly, I'm in the same place in my life now, too. And, it's crazy to actually think back that at some of the things that used to worry me, or, I used to get anxious about on what other people thought and decisions I would make. And, it's so freeing, to your point, when you finally let go of that and you just live in alignment with who you are. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And so, Rachael, this has been such a great conversation. I want to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you. What's the best way to reach out or work with you?
Yeah, I would say go, visit my website. It's trueworthfp.com. F as in financial, P as in planning. My website is a good place to start. There's a button where you can book a free 30-minute strategy session. And I love talking to people, and I would love to hear about your situation and give you a couple of nuggets, or what, however I can help, whether it's referrals, or even if working with me isn't the best option, you're going to walk away with something. So I think that's the best place to start. I'm on social media. I'm trying to get back into it. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. And then my book will be published hopefully very, very soon. And I'll definitely have that on my website. So that would probably be the best place to go for that. And then eventually it'll be published, so it'll be on Amazon and stuff, but it'll definitely be on my website as well.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll also include that in the show notes for those of you listening. You can find Rachael's information there. And also, if you're interested in joining the From Mrs. to Me community, you can find us on Facebook at FromMrsToMe.com. Rediscovering You After Divorce, where we're currently working through a 30-day intention challenge. So come join us. And if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, drop a review. And as I always say, remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. So keep going on that inner work, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed another episode of From Mrs. to Me, real life stories of real women and their journey of transformation after divorce. I'm Chrissy Freeman, and if you like this episode, please drop a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a story to share? Are you ready to inspire other women on their journey through divorce? If so, find me on Instagram at From Mrs. to Me. For more tools and resources on creating your path to transformation after divorce, follow my community on Facebook, From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce.